Welcome to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. It's happy hour somewhere. It might be 5 o'clock somewhere, but it's 8 p.m. East Coast time, and we are maybe showered, maybe hydrated, fresh off the Florida State practice field. It was, yep, there you go, Jerry. Powerade, not a Gatorade school in honor of Odell Hagens. No Gatorade in this podcast.
I'm drinking water in memory of Willie Taggart.
Okay. Well, that was Patrick Burnham, of course, the sarcastic one.
That's right.
Publisher Jerry Cutts. I'm Bob Ferranti. It was a very toasty day one. I thought Mike Norvell was very benevolent, letting the men go into the IPF for a second portion of day one of practice. But Pat, you've coined this first impressions as we do after home and away games in the fall. Let's talk first impressions, Pat, from football camp today. What did you see that your biggest takeaway maybe?
Well, I think there were a couple things. This team carries itself. I mean, we thought we saw a different team last year, and we did, but they certainly seem to know that their expectations with this season. And just listening to Jordan and Trey talking and interviewing Jared, they all seem very comfortable. The other thing that I think I noticed was if you're there every day, you notice the change in the physical presence of this football team. The offensive line looks different than it did last year. Bob, you mentioned after practice that the defensive line just looks. And if you show up once a season or twice a season at practice, you don't notice these subtle changes. But the subtle changes, Bless Harris looks much bigger than he did this time last year. He was kind of. I mean, he wasn't small by any stretch of the imagination, but he's more solid. He's up top. He's carrying better weight. And then Jeremiah Byers and Daryl Jackson and Dennis Briggs, I mean, they look like – I can remember when we started the Osceola, the rebirth of the Osceola 4 years ago, talking about our offensive lines and defensive lines didn't look exactly like everyone else. Now this looks like a true – particularly the defensive line, those defensive tackles and nose tackles. I mean, four of those guys are built like NFL players. And then, for my first chance to see Keon Coleman in person, and boy, he from a getting off the bus standpoint, he's thicker than I thought. He's certainly a guy that's been accomplished in his career. And then the third thing that stuck. As I was driving home and thinking about what we were going to talk about, in years past, it almost seemed like Mike really needed these 3 days of acclimations to get his team ready to get into pads. Even he mentioned at the end of his interview that, hey, we were in shorts. It's hard to make some evaluations until you get in pads. And, I think this is another thing is this seems to be more of a player-led team. I didn't hear as many coaches yelling today at a first practice as you normally do, and I think that stems from the veteran leadership and the returners they have on this team.
Jerry, I thought the defensive backs really flashed. We were standing there watching a couple of them. I mean, A.Z. Thomas went up against Johnny Wilson, really good one-on-one coverage on one play. We saw Edwin Joseph flying around, for example. I think the one-on-one matchups between wide receiver and DB, that we've seen those groups, that competition, I think through the years improve dramatically. That was one DB group that I think stood out today. Maybe your takeaways, Jerry.
Well, just on that, let's stick with what the topic you just brought up, defensive backs. Very much. There's going to be some really good competition throughout the year for the starting role at cornerback as well as safety. There's some good people out there, high quality. And to Pat's point, when I first got out on the field, Peter Warwick was standing there with Corey Fuller. And Fuller said to me, Jerry, how many years have you been covering this now? And I said 41, but the truth is it's 42. And PW said, there isn't anything you haven't seen, is there? And I didn't have a response to that. But after I got done watching the defensive line, I walked back over to Fuller and I said, "Hey, Corey, I think I have seen something that I hadn't seen before, and that's the size and the depth of that defensive line is unlike anything I've seen at Florida State." And Corey said to me, "That's an NFL defensive line right there." And I asked him, I said, in your playing days, which of course was '93 era, did you have any guys of that size? And of course, Odell was prior to that, but no. I mean, Florida State hasn't fielded a defensive front of this size, and I can't ever, Pat, maybe you can, but I can't remember them being able to go 2 or 3 men deep on the front.
Yeah, somebody told me today they had 3 guys that were over 300 pounds on that front four, and I didn't. And it might have been 3 or 4, but they made somebody at practice made a point to say, "Hey, listen, there's some big guys out here." And the comment was 3 or 4 guys. It was either 3 or 4, but no, I don't remember. Listen, as big as Dan Footman was 270. If you want to go back to the glory days, maybe when Corey Simon was nose tackle, I don't know who they had around him. I wasn't here at the time. I was actually working in football, but I mean, I knew Corey Simon was over 300 pounds when he played. I don't know who they had around him. Darnell Dockett was a big kid when he was playing at Florida State. I don't know if he's 300 pounds, but yeah, I think, I didn't pay attention to it until Bob mentioned it. And then I went back and stood behind the defensive line as they were going through some individual drills. And, the size up there, up on that front is phenomenal. And, listen, I was telling somebody, Daryl Jackson, you look at him, he's athletically built. He's got athletic looking ankles, but he doesn't have thick calves, but they're solid. They're solid. Like he is, when you hear about a guy with heavy hands, and I don't know how many people know what that means, but it's a guy with big mitts, thick mitts, and when it hurts when they hit you with them. And, they've got some guys with heavy hands in that defensive line, and they got some guys with heavy hands on the offensive line too.
Well, and the thing is, you look at a guy like Braden Fisk, and I mean, all those guys I'm sure are going to want to play with cutoff jerseys because, they're not belly hangers.
Yeah.
Those are big, solid kids that aren't fat.
And it was fun to listen. You mentioned Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, and it was fun to listen to Jared Verse talk about all the hard work he compared Braden Fisk a lot to himself. That they would find themselves in the weight room together or getting rehab, and he goes, it seems like Braden always beat me in, and how attention to detail Braden is. So I know that's kind of off the subject, but just since you brought him up, it was kind of, the first time we've actually, they've been with him 9 months. We've never seen Braden on the field until the day, outside a couple of individual drill segments in the spring. But obviously, I think they're anticipating big things from Braden Fisk. Mike mentioned that, hey, we know what he can do. We've seen his film. So, but anyway, I just want to throw that in there while you mentioned Braden, because we have not had a chance to talk about him very much at all, other than the fact that they brought in an all-MAC performer and a guy that's going to come in here and have the ability to start right away. If not, well, at least we'll play a lot if it doesn't win the starting job. And I'm not sure they're so good. They have a chance to be so deep on the defensive line. I think we're going to see everybody listed as a coach starter, right?
It is oar season, guys. It is oar season.
Hands and oars.
That's right. So, we'll see when the first 2 deep comes out. We'll have to do a over under on the amount of oars on the roster, because you're going to see it at several places. Maybe the only place you don't see it is behind Jordan Travis and Jared Verse. Everybody else may have an and or by their name. But listen, it speaks to how far this program has come going into Mike Norvell's 4th year. Well, I think he seemed I don't want to say relaxed, because Mike is not, or he's a very high energy guy, but I mean, like I said, he seemed like, all right, I've seen these guys all summer. I saw them in the spring. We've been able to spend 2 hours with them a week as position coaches. I think he's excited to get in pads as he's ever been since he's been here.
I think he's comfortable in this roster. It's his roster. It's his guys, the high school guys, the transfer portal guys. Hey, one of the best position groups was I thought the defensive backs today. And again, that's a new assistant coach, but it speaks to how quickly a young assistant, a first-year assistant, can kind of jump in here. I think maybe that's a byproduct of having time over the summer on the field, off the field to work with athletes. This is a newer, maybe a modified summer rule where you can do a little bit more hands-on with football players over the summer.
They get the ball this time. They get to work with the football. They can't line up. If I'm thinking correctly, it's got to be individual drills, and obviously, as you guys, I think you're alluding to the secondary. Certainly, it gives the new secondary coach a chance to understand how his guys work, how they want to be coached, how they need to be coached, who he needs to push by getting on their ass, and who he needs to give a little love tap to get them motivated. So I do think those 2 hours a week, I mean, a lot of people would say, oh, well, it's just 2 hours, but that's 2 hours these guys have not been getting in years past. And for a new coach, I think it's probably a bigger advantage than it is to Alex Atkins or Odell Haggins, who's been here and probably understands his players a little bit better than a guy like Patrick Surtain, who's been around these kids for 9 months and only on the practice field with them for 15 days.
The secondary, to me, I mean, it's in my practice report. There should be live here soon on the Osceola. That was the biggest takeaway of the day for me. I mean, I think you talk about, and Coach Drabell talked about, and we've talked about the energy of today's practice, and there was a lot of it. That started in the secondary. I mean, to me, no play. DBs sometimes get a bad rap for kind of reacting or celebrating two plays that like they didn't really have anything to do with, like, breaking up a pass or whatever, but the pass was incomplete, so I want to celebrate. To me, the play that summed up a swagger of the day is, I mean, Azareye'h Thomas, who didn't play a ton as a freshman, kind of got put in a situation where it was one of those Johnny Wilson jump balls that are kind of near impossible to defend just because he's so tall and has that jumping ability. And Azareye'h Thomas held his own and broke up the pass, got in front of him, and really like out physical. And Johnny's on the ground, not having caught the ball. Azareye'h stands over him and flexes. And I was just like, oh my, Azareye'h, like that was a wow play and a wow reaction of, I mean, making a play and then having a reaction like that is if you can have that swagger if you can make the play.
Well, and I that y'all mentioned that, and the thing I like, the thing I sometimes notice. Fake intensity or fake enthusiasm at practice. I didn't notice any of that today. I mean, it was not mass produced. It was organic. It was reacting to good things happening on the playing field. Now I let you guys handle the top field 7-on-7. So y'all saw more of the DBs than I did. I went back and watched some of the young guys on defense that Florida State is trying to develop. So y'all got spoiled today. I did not. So.
Hey, a guy who truthfully was not on my radar a ton coming into not one of the guys I was more looking forward to. Edwin Joseph had a really nice pass breakup in 7-on-7 against Winston Wright. Almost had another one on the very next play. And then had a diving pass breakup in 11-on-11. He made a few really nice plays, and he's a guy I know. Mike said, Mike's mentioned they're starting him at nickel with Kevin Knowles working at safety. It would seem that kind of the backup spot at nickel is up for grabs, and I mean maybe he's a guy who we didn't kind of have in that conversation who could play more than we thought right away.
Yeah, I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but we have seen players play early in their position in their careers at nickel corner. I don't know whether it's because you got help on all sides or it's just you find. I mean, you're obviously going to find yourself in man-to-man coverage from time to time, depending on the call. But anyway, it is fascinating that guys have been able to assemble. And listen, the old football adage is the further you're away from the ball, the middle of the field, the easier it is to play early. And I think we are seeing some of that. But yeah, certainly he was not a kid that I expected to hear about on day one, to be quite honest with you. So listen, again, speaks to the way they're recruiting, and obviously that we preface everything, but this is a shorts, right? This is a shorts. We got our little disclaimer, but yeah, certainly it was not one of the kids. I thought we would hear about Quindarius or somebody like that. Somebody that or KJ Kirkland, somebody that really had shown signs of promise in the spring. But yeah, certainly it was. Edwin was a surprise, and I can't wait to watch it more.
One of the things I noticed about Edwin, in addition to those plays that he made, to your point, Kurt, and the reaction that he got from his teammates, but he's an energizer bunny. Even on plays where he's chasing the ball or not involved in the tackle, he has a little Jamie Robinson in him in terms of enjoying playing the game.
And a little Greedy Vance, I think, is another guy who is similar in that regard. A guy who is not afraid to get in people's faces to talk that talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things about Greedy is he's always so friendly after practice.
Oh yeah, he always says hi to us. Like he is as much as anyone. There is football player Greedy and there is person Greedy, and they are two different people with two pretty different personalities.
And when he steps off the field, he is the nicest kid in the world.
Yeah.
I don't think he kind of. I'm not going to bring up the name. There was another kid on last year's team that was, he was. Every time I saw him off the field, he would be like, "Hey Pat, what's going on?" Or Shane's brother, whatever he would call me until he got to know me. But
Okay. Well, we're 16 minutes in, and we've only talked about the secondary and the defensive line.
who do you want to talk about next?
Let's go round table. Let's talk about position, maybe one position group that we're really watching this spring. And we can't pick DBs since we've already jumped off. I'm sorry, preseason. Going backwards to cooler weather.
The past.
Going backwards to cooler weather. That's what the dehydration is doing to me.
We got LSU a month from today, Bob. Come on.
All right, one position group, Pat, that you're really looking at, and you cannot take DBs. I know you want to badly.
Well, I'm going to let you guys. We've talked about DBs. Listen, I'm going back to what I've said. I think is going to be one of the most intriguing battles all camp is going to be to see who starts at both tackle spots. I think it's going to be a fascinating battle between Robert Scott, Jeremiah Byers, and Bless Harris to fill those two positions. And listen, Darius Washington has played tackle in the past, as recently as last year. You got Armella, you got Early. Would one of those younger guys make a push? But I think Washington is one of those guys that will continue. He's a guy that will rotate, as they like to do, or cross train. I think Scott, Byers, and Harris are straight tackles. But listen, I'm looking forward to seeing. It's a good thing that they have depth, and Mark Alvin and I have talked about this before. Having 8 that you feel good about is great, but really you want a starting 5. You want some continuity, and I still think because of the experience and talent that Scott, Byers, and Harris all have, you might see some rotation in there. But I'm really looking forward to seeing that battle. And then I'll say the same thing at guard. You've got, again, Darius Washington as a candidate at every position. He's kind of like he's a Swiss Army knife on the offensive line. He'll fight. I guarantee he figures out a way to start somewhere on this offensive line. He's done it every year. But you've got him. You've got Dimitri Emmanuel, Keandre Jones, and Casey Roddick. So I just think I think Maurice is the center unless something were to happen. I think he has nailed that down, but I think that is the only spot that's nailed. Now I think they have a very good idea of the 7 or 8 guys that they're going to play. These guys get more time with their players than they ever had before, but I'll stick close to home and go offensive tackle and offensive guard.
Well, if to your point, Pat, if Maurice was unable to play in a game, I think the first man up would probably be Washington.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to. Yeah, I think he's a guy that's going to slide in or out over. We've seen him play. I think he's lined up at 4 of the 5 offense. Started at 4 of the 5 offensive line positions in his career. I could be wrong about that, but I know he started at guard, a game at guard, a game at center, and a game at tackle. I'm not sure left or right, but I think he started at right tackle and left tackle. I think he started at center and I want to say right guard in the game. But anyway, yeah, he's fascinating. I think he's a guy that. He reminds me of a guy that we didn't name Cockroach at USF. We called him Cockroach because you never could get him out of the lineup. You couldn't kill him. Nobody could beat him out. Didn't matter what happened. We bring in kids that were more athletic than he was and more prototypical than he was, and you just couldn't get that kid. And I think that it's kind of. I think that's kind of Darius. I think Darius is going to figure it out. He's going to adapt to whatever battle he finds himself in. But I think I think it's great that we're starting to have these. I think, it's a great conversation to have. We were not having these conversations 4 years ago when Mike first got here. They were just trying to find really 5 guys that could chew gum and walk at the same time. It was awful. I remember going to that Syracuse game, I believe 2019, and it was 2 of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen in my life on the same field. And so these are great problems to have. And I'm sure there will be somebody at one of those 5 spots that we're not talking about that'll interject themselves in the battle. But those 7 guys in particular are the guys I'm looking forward to watching this fall.
Jerry, I have a feeling you might be leaning toward linebacker here, but any position groups that you're watching very closely?
Well, linebacker.
There we go.
I just see the game from that position for some reason, but more so because it may be the position that has been in development as much as any.
No way. Jerry's Wi-Fi drops out in the middle of an answer on the linebackers.
He'll be back. He'll be back.
He will be back. I'm really debating this one of which one I should take, because it'd be too easy to say safety, how those guys develop, who the backups are. Still very, very curious. It's another slam dunk backup quarterback. I don't think this is Tate Rodemaker's job by any means. He might be in the driver's seat, so to speak, to be the number 2 guy. But that doesn't mean A.J. Duffy, Brock Glenn can't jump in and show in scrimmages that they're really capable options of running the offense. I think we've got a good competition there at quarterback, for example.
Yeah, listen, I think that's a fascinating short-term question and long-term question because of the implications of who I think, in any other year, you might not care if one of your backup quarterbacks asserts themselves. You may say, hey, he's got the hot hand this week, I'll go with him. But this team is so talented, Bob, can go so far. If you had to go to a backup quarterback, I think because of what's riding on this season, I would think that you'd want some clear delineation between who's second and who's third and fourth. Listen, it's a fascinating question. Ideally, they only play in mop-up roles, right? But we've seen in the past that that's not always going to be the case. Jordan missed half a game against Louisville. Tate came in, did an admirable job. Jordan's gets his style of play, which we love, and it's not a knock against him. I love the fact he plays like a warrior. He plays like every play is his last play. He's fascinating to watch play. He's must-see television when he plays. But let's just say he does get dinged up for a game or for half a game or whatever the case may be. This team has a chance to compete for the ACC championship, and the byproduct of that is compete for a place in the college football playoff, depending on how all the other conferences shake out at the end of the year. But I do think that it's going to be fascinating short term to see who's the backup quarterback is, and then that will have and we got plenty of time to talk about this next spring and December when the portal hits again. I'm not saying anybody's going to transfer, but I think I do think just being somebody that follows the program and understands what they have on this roster, I do think that you'd like to know going into LSU that so and so is my definitive backup, and you're not going week to week wondering who's got the hot hand with the second team offense. But and listen, like I said, there will. It's important about the future of that quarterback position. And, you've got 3 very talented guys, 3 guys that can throw the ball. And I think it's going to be about how they lead these guys. They got some very talented guys around them, even on the second team offense, as we'll get into as we continue to go through fall camp. But yeah, I think that's fascinating short term and long term.
I feel like a lot of the position battles, I want to get Jerry to jump back in on linebackers in a second, but it feels like a lot of these position battles that are really cool to watch are also for the number 2 spot at a lot of these positions, which is great. I mean, it shows that so many experienced players have chosen to come back. You can say NIL is working. I think we all see that talent retention was a priority for Mike Norvell and the coaching staff. It is working. I think a lot of these position battles, we're talking about quarterback, receiver, backup running back, who will get some playing time at tight end, for example. There are a lot of questions, but as much so about who's the number 2 guy, who's the number 3 guy, etc. Even who challenges that kicker to some extent too will be an interesting
But the putter's got a hell of a day
conversation.
today.
Alex Mastromano's mullet is the party is in the back, folks. It's really very cool to see. But Jerry, your Wi-Fi is back on. Let's finish up the linebacker thought.
Yeah, well, real quick, I think there's 4 guys that we've identified that will be the 4 main players. And we know what Deloach is. I think we know what Lundy is. But Bethune, it will be healthy this year. And, Omar Graham has certainly made a name for himself in the spring. And those are the 4 that, you want to see how they develop. I think those are the ones you count on for the LSU game and into September, probably into the Clemson game. And then you're looking to see if there's development from some of the younger people that they've brought in. But to be brief, I think those 4 are who we will live and ride with into the LSU game.
Okay, well, let's wrap us up here again. Thursday night special edition, Osceola Seminole Sidelines. We talked earlier today on a kind of special board of trustee meeting recap. That was Jerry, Kurt, and myself. So go to your podcast feed or YouTube, and we had a pretty comprehensive breakdown of that meeting, and of course read Jerry's column about the topic. Let's wrap up here. How does FSU handle expectations? I think we've had this discussion on and off from January when we knew the hype train was building, right, Pat? We've talked about how will this team handle prosperity now. I'm not sure how much we can take away from day one, but the competition and the intensity, if that tells us something, I think those were positives today. But expectations, how does FSU handle them this August leading up to LSU?
Well, I'll start with what I believe Mike would probably say, and Jared Verse did say. I asked Jared Verse, Brian Kelly said at SEC Media Days that Florida State had served as a motivating factor for his team throughout the offseason. And I asked Jared, did LSU serve as a motivating factor because it's the first game and it's a high-profile game? Did that motivate you guys as a team in the offseason? And he goes, listen, we were well aware of LSU as a more than formidable opponent. We expect them to be better than they were last year. He mentioned the offensive line being a year older, and I'm sure he was referencing Will Campbell, the kid that started as a true freshman last year for LSU. But he said it's about us. It's about us taking care of business. It's about us staying focused on what we got to do. And I think it, this is Coach Speak 101, but I think it's about taking each day one day at a time. And I think, going back to what I said about this being a player-led team, Jordan Travis has been through an awful lot in 4 years. I think his leadership and his voice are going to carry. I don't think there's any doubt who the leaders are on this football team, and I think that will help them handle expectations. All of these guys, the Jared Versus, Trey Benson, and Jordan Travis, listen, they've got a lot right on the season as a team and individuals. But as I said today, we all saw all 3 of them talk. There's no one's being braggadocious. We don't see cockiness. We see self-assured guys. We see guys that are seem more than happy to accept this challenge. And I'll say the same thing I said last year. And we hear Mike talk about family a lot. We hear football coaches talk about it all the time. And, sometimes it's lip service. I'm not saying about Mike. I'm just saying when coaches talk. But, we said last year, this team enjoyed practicing with each other. And I think we saw the same. They do compete, but they do seem to enjoy each other. We don't see a lot of back and forth, other than, well-intended trash talk, if you want to put it that way. But I think it's a mature team, and I think what Jared said, if we take care of us, everything that we need to take care of in Orlando against LSU will take care of itself. And I know that's not going to be a popular answer, but listen, you got to focus on your work, focus on what you do, and if everything if you're doing the right things, you'll have enough success that you'll get to where you need to go.
It's a mature response, and that's a good one, right?
Jerry,
Jerry, your thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, they say adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. And there'll come there'll come a time in a game where FSU will face adversity. And it could be a loss. And how they respond to that adversity will reveal the character that they have. And I think, to Pat's point, this team is built on character. I think, Mike says it's built on work. And the people that have chosen to accept a scholarship at Florida State realize that. And they're focused on the work. And I think they've faced a lot of adversity, both as individuals in their football careers and as a team. And, they've responded to it. We're talking about the great improvement we've seen over the last even 2 years. So I expect this team will respond well to expectations. As Pat was saying, I think this team, this is a cliche, but I think they love each other. I think that's why some of the guys came back. They got some things to improve upon individually and to accomplish together. And so I think they embrace these expectations. I think this is what they've worked for.
And here's the other thing, Jared, when you were talking, it made me think of it. Here's the other thing. They haven't met their own expectations. They don't have a championship ring of any kind. They've got a bowl ring from the Cheez-It Bowl. Right. But they have not played an ACC championship game. And the ACC championship game gives you a chance to be a candidate to go to the college football playoff. So I think, as high as the expectations are, and I think the expectations are high for people that cover the program, and I don't think players look at it the same way, and certainly coaches don't. They're aware of it, but they're busy getting ready for the season. We're getting ready in our own way, but we are looking. We don't have to go through practice every day. We get to go watch practice, but I think the fans' expectations may be more so than the player. I think the players still have goals in front of us. I think Mike Norvell and his staff still have goals. Sure, it was great to get back to a 10-win season, and Florida State certainly is trying to reassert itself as a legitimate power in college football under Mike Norvell, and I think they're headed that way. But I think the expectations of the team are probably a little bit different than the fans. I think this team wants to go and face whoever the other best team in the ACC is in Charlotte. I think so. I don't think they've reached their own expectations, which I think will make handling the outside expectations easier. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think we're in agreement that this team has as good a chance to handle expectations as any team I think we've had.
Yep.
I think they're built for it.
Well, it's going to be a fun ride. I can tell you that. I mean, this team's got a lot of, it's got a lot of playmakers on offense. I think it's going to be offense that could be hell on a defensive coordinator each and every week. There are just enough questions to make it interesting, particularly depth at linebacker, depth in the secondary. Although after what we saw today, I think, again, day one in shorts, but we all were surprised that, the secondary was a little bit more talented than probably we thought it was. Or we added some new faces and some new bodies. So it's going to be interesting, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun season. I can't remember the last time I was just looking forward to a Florida State football season. I was really fired up about last season. So, but yeah, I think that I don't know what they're doing behind closed doors, but this team does seem focused. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. And again, we may sit down in a week from now if they've been in pads and have different thoughts and different feelings. That's one of the reasons we named this First Impressions, is because it's the first thing we think, and then we get a chance to go watch the film again on Sunday or the copy, and then we think something else by the time we get to Monday morning. But listen, it's going to be fascinating. I think collectively, and Jerry, you talked about how many years you've I can imagine it's probably the most excited you've been about a Florida State football season since at least 2014 or 2015.
Oh, certainly. Yes, absolutely. That's the thing I said to Corey today was it's my 42nd first day of fall, but I'm as excited, if not more excited about this one than any other one I've faced. I think it's because we're hungrier. It's been a while since it's
I think
been
a lot of
10
the
years.
players, yeah, a lot of the players went through, like you guys mentioned, some of those downtimes. If you went through 2020, 21, yeah, I mean, you feel good about all those wins, those rivalry wins. You feel good about the work. You guys talked about the love. There's guys wanting to win for the player next to you. That's your brother. You want to perform. I think we're starting to channel a little bit of those dynasty days types of conversations. The competition at each position is really good. The camaraderie, the brotherhood, the concept that there's just talent at every position, and that the practices make these guys better for the game days. It feels like we're getting toward kind of those glory days of some degree. I think that's perhaps a little too optimistic to say on day one, but I think there's a feel about an air of confidence and maturity in what this team can do.
Yeah, Alice, I don't think we're overreacting to anything. I mean, it's easy to do that, and certainly when you see a team run around in shorts, and I don't want to save this story for another time, but I've seen a guy go way overboard on watching one clip of a guy throw a ball a couple of years ago. at least we're watching practice. But listen, I think there's reason to be excited. I think Florida State fans in particular have gone through probably a drought they didn't think they were going to go through, and I understand why fans are excited, and but I do think it helps that some of these players on this team are this happy as they were, and same for Mike Norvell and his staff. I'm sure they were more than excited to win 10 games last year. I'm not sure that they thought that was a realistic goal going into the season, but they did it, and I think there's still some unfinished business for guys like Jordan Travis and Jared Verse that want to go out, having taken Florida State to an ACC championship. I think that's what I think they're living. I think that how do you offset the expectation is they want to leave a legacy, and their legacy is more defined if they win an ACC championship than if they don't.
Right.
I think that's a good place to leave it for us. Seminole Sidelines brought to you by the Osceola. We thank you for watching. Special primetime edition here. We started at 8 o'clock. If you missed it, go back and watch on YouTube. We'll upload to Apple, Spotify. Check out our site, theosceola.com. We've got practice observations, videos. You can see about 6-7 minutes worth of practice highlights, get a little bit of your action fix watching various players, and read some observations from the Osceola staff. We'll be back next week with more on Seminole Sidelines. For now, take care. We'll talk to you soon. Practice Friday afternoon, so more coverage of Florida State football on the Osceola Friday evening. So for Pat Burnham, Kurt Weiler joined us briefly there, Jerry Cutts, I'm Bob Ferranti. Take care. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.